Hey there, class. Mr. Santos here, and today I just want to talk to you a little bit about plot as it relates to literature. Not sure if you can hear that crazy wind going on right now in the background, but it sounds pretty kicking. Anyway, plot, as you learn in class, has 5 elements to it. That's exposition, where the setting and characters are introduced, the conflict or main problem of the story, developing or rising action, which is where the main character tries to solve the problem, figure it out. The climax, which is the most intense point of action in a story. And then lastly is the resolution. It's sort of where the dust settles and you sort of see where everybody ends up. Maybe it's for better, maybe it's for worse. And again, that's just life, how a story ends up. Sometimes we have happy endings, sometimes we have sad endings. Sometimes we have endings that aren't endings at all, but new beginnings. And that happens very often in stories. So those are the 5 elements of plot as they would appear in a classroom setting. But I want to talk to you about plot more from a writer's perspective. I want you first to consider that every life is a story. And life itself, in general, is a grand story, a huge story, right? From the moment that we were born to the moment that our lives are over, we only experience a part of the middle of that story. We weren't here at the very beginning, and we're not going to be here at the very end, more than likely, all right? So, but each one of our lives contributes to this great story, and each one of our lives has a story in and of itself, okay? Just move forward with that idea in your head. The stories that are worth telling are often not our daily lives. And you see lots of people online posting about their daily lives. Like, this is what happened to me at the grocery store today. Or, I just did my laundry, LOL. Something like that. That could just be very typical. Those aren't stories. Those are updates. What makes a story is that conflict and how you as a person go about solving that conflict or that problem. And the story itself goes all the way to its resolution. Take, for example, our current situation here with the shelter in place and the coronavirus. This is now part of your story. It's part of my story. It's part of your family's stories. It's part of people you don't even know, their stories. And everybody is going to come out of this with a completely different story. And when you're looking at plot and how it relates to all of us, think about how you felt at the very beginning of this pandemic. I remember one of my boarders asking me, hey, Mr. Santos, or hey, JC, they call me by my first name. Hey, JC, do you think the coronavirus is going to come here to Hawaii? What's going to happen? And I looked at him, this is back in early January or mid-January, and I said, you know what? I've lived through several pandemics before. I've lived through the swine flu, I've lived through SARS, and we definitely took precautions, but it never got really bad and unmanageable, and it really never affected our lives so greatly. Fast forward a couple months, and I wrote this down in a reflection I wrote that I never dreamed that the wave would fall further from the shore, or further than the shore. But here we are. The wave has come inland. It has flooded homes. It has halted people's lives. It has changed people's lives. I no longer live with my 10 boarders. They're back off at their home countries, or they are living with their wonderful Maui prep families who have taken them in. So their lives and their stories have been impacted as well. Everybody's coming into little conflicts now in their life, right? I want you maybe to think about a conflict that you're going through right now. Maybe it's a conflict that's related to shelter in place, or maybe it's an unrelated conflict that you might be having with your family or with some friends. That conflict, all the way to its resolution, is part of your story, okay? So if you think about it, everything about these stories, the struggles, the setbacks, the breakthroughs, the ideas that you get, the learning that you take away from this story, it all has to do and creates this plot, this chaotic or beautiful plot that will make you who you are, that will ultimately sum up your life in your own story that you leave behind here on earth. And that is why plot's important, I think. When you're reading literature, the stories that authors share, yeah, they're made up, yeah, they're fictional, but they're coming from real people. They're coming from real people who know other real people, who have heard stories, who have collected observations about people, and are now telling you something that hopefully you can come away with a lesson that will help you live your life better, or that will make you think. As a writer myself, that's my mission with every story that I write. I don't write purely to entertain. In fact, that's not even my main focus. My focus is for you to come away with something that's going to make you a better person. The book that I published, my goal for that was to highlight human relationships, especially with family. And I think that our connection to people, especially those closest to us, will be the measure of who we are when we are done with this life. That's my goal as an author. I wanted that to be conveyed in my book. So, just to sort of conclude, plot's pretty important because it's what happens to us. It's what happens to a character. And the plot of a novel that you might read is where that character's story intersects with your own story. You need to be able to find that connection. That's why we foreshadow. We predict what's going to happen next. And that's why we foreshadow incorrectly sometimes. We try to predict what a character might do or what might happen to a character as if we were in that character's position. And sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes the author throws something into a story that the character doesn't expect and the reader does not expect. And guess what? Life is the same way. It throws us these curveballs and we have to learn how to deal with it. Okay? So, when you're studying plot in literature, consider plot of your own life and see how the two connect and find ways to maximize your understanding of the plot as you read your story. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.